So I have this scene, and this is exactly the scene that we used to have before. That's pretty much the Buddha statue as a PRT volume, and if I would render this as usual, I have all the settings as I had in the initial presentation. I'll hit render. It says that I'm going to override the TIFF. I'll actually disable the saving. I don't really care for that. So if I render these particles in about 5 seconds, I get my, 5.8 million particles rendered just like in the beginning of the demo. So if I want to save these particles, including the lighting, I basically go into the save particles file sequence. I specify where I want to save. In this case, I have that path. I go again to the render, save particles, and give a prefix to what the file should be called, and check the option compute lighting channel. This is kind of important because this basically means that at saving time, the particles will first be illuminated just like we did now, but instead of rendering to image, will be rendered to disk. So we'll create a PRT file that already contains the illumination, pre-baked. So when this is checked, an additional lighting channel will appear, and if I would hit render now, it will actually save the particles. I have already saved them, so I don't have to do that. All I have to do is switch back to the viewer, disable the saving. I'm output rendering the current frame, as you know. And let's take a look. I'll disable the PRT volume. And I'm going to enable this PRT loader here. And the PRT loader is loading the particles that are on disk. There are a lot of particles, by the way. So now it's reading 6 million particles from disk. These are the 6 million particles on disk from the saved file, and you see that the lighting is already baked in the particles. Now, of course, if I want to make it a little bit faster, I can go into the display and say I'll be showing only a percentage of them. It's still reading the whole file, but it's loading every end particle, and now I have much less particles displayed in the viewport. And you notice that I have disabled the particle limit, because if the particle limit was on, and I switch this one to 100%, as it should be, it will read all the particles, but it will display only the first million. So this is the first million of the Buddha, and the rest is not being shown. But this is actually pretty useful already to actually get an idea what the lighting would be. And if I would render now, but render not with lighting, or disable the actual light, there is no light now, and go into the options, and you'll notice that emission is enabled. And I have a copy channel tag, which currently is copying the data from the custom channel into color. I can keep this one and add another one, or I can switch this one to copy to emission. And when I do this, the emission channel will be set. I will actually render to the view, to the editor, and the particles will be loaded from disk and drawn, and they were just rendered exactly like the PRT volume would render with the interactive light, but this is the actual baked lighting displayed as emission. So the light wasn't considered at all. That means you can pre-light your assets, composite your scene, hit render, and it will render in a fraction of the time, because no interactive lighting will be performed. All the lighting will be already there. And then you can go a step further, as I showed in the tutorial that I have. I can switch this one to actually use the lighting channel as source. And now you see the lighting is white where it should be dark. I'll switch this one to black. I'll switch this one to a different color, more or less white. And now the white is there, the black is there. I'm using only the X. I'll use the magnitude. Doesn't really matter. In this case, it's pretty much the same, because the lighting X, Y, and Z have the same, the RGB have the same value. But the cool thing is now I can start relighting my scene by just manipulating the colors. If I want my light to be red, I can just change the gradient, and that will produce a different result. I can go and change this one to something greenish here, and that will be kind of crazy lighting. So with the baked lighting, you can actually draw repainting of the particles and re-render them, and it will look like that when you render with the emission. Actually, in this case, it won't, because I'm copying here the color channel, the lighting channel directly into the emission. I'll copy the color channel, which I'm generating underneath with the gradient, and that should pass now the color into the emission. No, actually, it didn't do that. So I have to figure out, yeah, that's why I didn't enable the option to actually use that gradient in the renderer. Now that it is checked, this generates color. Color goes from the lighting. Color goes into the emission, and now I have the reds on the left side, and then the green in the middle, and the shadows are still black. If I want my shadows to be bluish, for example, I can do that. Here you go. Blue shadows, green midtones, and red highlights.